Ironside will not be seen tonight, so we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress with you. Happy to welcome back Michael Stradford. Good to see you, Mike. Mike's been with us before. We had him on when he and Dennis Cowan were doing a Kickstarter campaign for The Art of Dennis Cowan. And he's back, and he's got a new campaign and a fantastic subject. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, so good to be here again, John. Thanks.
My pleasure. Well, Michael, it's your fault. You keep coming up with these great projects that you're working on, and I got to talk about them and stuff. For people who may or may not know, Michael's Kickstarter campaign is about this book, Steve Holland. It's the Torn Shirt Sessions, the deluxe edition. And I didn't realize, Michael, I thought this was, you from the start, but this is an expanded version of a previously released book.
Yeah, when I originally produced it, I printed and distributed it through Amazon. And it was efficient in terms of printing it quickly and being able to distribute it quickly. But the quality of the paper was just not there. So the reproductions didn't look as good as they should have. And over time, I would meet different people and they said, man, I love the book. I just wish it was on better quality paper. And I agreed. And so when I was working on the Dennis Cowan book, I wanted to find a really good printer for that because we've got a lot of great art and a lot of great images. So I found a printer in China that I decided I would use the Steve Holland book as kind of a test. And that gave me an opportunity to kind of go in, add some more images that I didn't have initially, update some of the text, and do a larger size. So this size book is a real coffee table book. It's 9x12, and it's on 157 gram paper stock, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. The color reproduction's great. The black and white images look really good, so I'm really pleased with it.
Well, thank God you beat the trade wars, I think, and got your books from China before the tariffs start. So that's excellent, man. Again, the subject of the book, Steve Holland. People may or may not know that name because he was also a television name. And I didn't put two and two together. I'm going to throw up a couple pictures, but he was Flash Gordon in the 1954 TV series. And there's a good picture of Steve and Dale. And then here's one of Dale, Steve, and Zarkov. Flash, I suppose, and Zarkov and Dale. But so he, and that was really his main role. And then James Bama rediscovers him in the what's the story? Because he also then became the basic model for Doc Savage. These kind of iconic covers, and I got a couple loaded as well. James Bama had started in the '60s, 10 years after Flash Gordon.
Yeah, well, he was a working actor, and he would get jobs here and there, and he'd pop up in small places here and there. But he was a married man that had a couple kids, and so he had to put food on the table. So he started modeling for advertising, for Men's Adventure magazines, and for paperbacks. And he and James Bama were friends. So in 1964, his acting work had pretty much dried up. He had finished a play with Julie Harris.
Oh, wow.
But his acting work, for the most part, had dried up. But he was working pretty regularly as a model. And when Bantam Books decided to take the Doc Savage pulps and introduce him to a new audience via the paperback. They wanted a new look for Doc Savage. So James Bama, who had painted dozens and dozens of really beautiful Bantam covers, got the job. And so he called Holland, because he and Steve were friends. And so he called Holland in 1964. He painted the first cover, which was the Man of Bronze, but the hairstyle was similar to Steve's own hair. And Len Leon, who was the art director for Bantam Books, said, nah, we need something a little more sci-fi. Give him like a skull cap look. And so that's what we have now today. And it's funny, there are hardcore Doc Savage people that hate that hairstyle. But I would argue if it wasn't for that hairstyle, we probably wouldn't be talking about Doc Savage 60 years later.
I agree, man. It really is the iconic look, and it does make him distinct from just another, muscle guy. Here's a great picture of Steve from 1970. And again, there he is in the jodhpurs and the torn military shirt, kind of, classic Doc Savage uniform. And I love this. And really, you have all these great pictures in the book that show the original modeling. For the audio audience, I'm showing them now on Word Balloon's YouTube channel. But you see on the left, Steve taking the pose, and then you got the Bama cover on the right. And it's really cool. It's amazing. And man, it's a shame because you tell us how long, because he out modeled Bama doing the covers when they went to, and I'm assuming that was when Bama passed away, that they went to other artists, or maybe they hired other artists and Bama just wasn't doing it anymore.
No, Bama just passed recently. Bama passed, I guess now about 2 years ago, and he was about 95 years old.
Wow.
And he left New York in the 70s and moved to Wyoming and started doing Western paintings, and had a second career from that. But when he finished, I think in 71, Bama had done 62 covers. And then Fred Pfeiffer did a couple, and a couple other artists. And then Bob Larkin came in, because Larkin auditioned for Bantam when he was 19 years old.
Wow.
And I've got that first painting included in the book. And he was the closest, because they didn't want to replicate Bama, but they wanted to stay in that kind of feel. And Bob had the closest feel to that. So he did 35 covers, and he used Steve. And then after Bob stopped painting, then Joe DeVito came on when Will Murray did a new series of Doc Savage books. And so Joe DeVito did a combination of the existing photos that Bama took of Steve, and then he had another photographer shoot Steve when Steve was in his 60s.
Wow.
Because he tried. It was really funny talking to Joe. He said, he said Steve had pretty much retired, and so I found this young guy that had the look and had the physique, but he just didn't have the thing, And so I called Steve and I asked him, I said, would you mind coming to the studio and showing this guy how to pose and this and that? And he said once he got there and he started, I realized, what am I doing? This is Doc Savage. This is the guy.
Yeah.
And so he sent the young guy home, and then Steve did the rest of the photos.
Did he still have the physique in his 60s? He was like, This must have been just part of his regimen and everything, staying in that kind of shape. My God, the guy's amazing. And it's such a shame. Really, it's now that I think even more, that goofy George Pal movie from that Ron Eli did, that should have been a no-brainer, because Ron Eli, no flies on him. He was always great Tarzan, looked like Doc Savage, but they made a goofy movie, and it's like, but Steve would have been great, and especially given that he was an actor too. But I guess I know Ron's Tarzan was still in syndication when the Doc Savage movie happened, and that probably helped, and so he had a bigger profile than Steve did. But yeah, man, no, missed opportunity, because geez, unbelievable.
Well, the interesting thing, Steve was slim for a long time until he got in his 40s. Then he got more bulk. So if you
Okay.
look at when you look at some of the photos, you'll see that he's slim. And Bama told me, he said, I would paint Steve with a smaller head, but I'd usually thicken the shoulders, thicken the arms, thicken the chest. But he
Sure.
had such definition that he was able to use, just the way the light caught his muscles and the definition. Bama was able to take advantage of all that.
That's excellent. I was talking to a friend who I think provided you with the art, or Dynamite the art that Alex Ross did here, that both evokes Bama's savage look, but also in the background there's Steve Holland right there, that big face. That's a beautiful picture. And again, hey, it's Alex. Alex is a sponsor of Word Balloon, and I'm thrilled that he is, because truly I've always admired his work, and here's a classic example with a classic hero.
Yeah, he was kind enough to give me a nice interview for another book I did on Steve, which was a career retrospective book called Steve Holland, the World's Greatest Illustration Art Model. And I wanted to have a way to connect the past to the present. And so I reached out to Alex, and he was kind enough to give me a really, really nice interview where he talked about how Bama influenced him. And he pointed out a couple of things that he did that had direct connections to Bama, and and he talked about Steve Holland, and we both chuckled because he painted a cover of The Shadow for Dynamite that was essentially an homage to the Man of Bronze cover.
Oh wow!
Except it's The Shadow, and that's the one piece of original Alex Ross art that I own. It's hanging on my wall.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. It's
That's
a
great.
piece.
Well, a couple more examples of Steve on other pulp heroes. And I remember seeing this book. I'm sure I saw it at a used book shop back when I was a kid. But Justice Incorporated and the action hero, the Avenger, who had his little gun and his little knife, Mike and Ike.
Yeah, now, when I first saw that paperback when I was a kid, I assumed it was Bama, but it wasn't. It was an artist named Peter Karras, who had a very Bama-like style. And so they hired him specifically to mirror that Bama-like style. And when I was doing my research for the Holland books, I had an opportunity to interview a number of these illustrators, several of which have passed on since I did the interview. But Peter was one of the ones who I talked to, and he was great, and he had great stories about him and Steve. And he actually gave me the cover that I used for the Steve Holland career book.
Oh, very cool, man. That's very cool. Here's another example. Again, another hero that Steve did. Oh! It really is this Is this the cover of your book?
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent, man. Because Cry of the Hawk was, I guess, the paperback and everything. But right.
Yeah.
That's excellent. And again, a better representation of Steve. Full faced, and that's great. I hope he had the lady hanging on him like as depicted in the paint.
Yeah, I don't. From everything I'm told, ladies hung on him pretty often.
You can't blame him. This is a great looking guy, man. I mean, geez, he's the real deal. And think about that, everybody. As I'm showing some of these photos again, he was Flash Gordon in 1954, and this picture that I'm showing of him in the jumpers and the torn shirt, it's. I don't ask me to do the math. All right, it's 16 years. Yeah, 16 years later, still looks great. Unbelievable, man.
He was born in 1925, so I don't know what that math works out to, but he was not a kid.
Yeah, so 25. So he was 55. Yeah, probably 55 years old.
Yeah.
No. So 45.
45. Yeah.
But still impressive.
Yeah.
Come on. I'm sure most people in their 40s right now are going, I don't look like that. But that's amazing, man. Were there filmed or recorded interviews with Steve from the years, or even print interviews?
There were print interviews, a few print interviews, like in Comic Scene and Nostalgia Illustrated, in the 80s and early 90s. And there was a book that came out on Bama's career called American Realist, and Paul Gilbert produced a documentary that went with the book. And in the documentary, he interviewed Steve, which I think was the last interview Steve did.
Wow.
And he gave me that footage, so it's like a half hour of Steve talking about his career and all that. I actually cut together like a 15-minute doc for that, but I have to talk to Paul and see if he'd be okay with me using that interview footage. But it was cool. It was cool. He had a twinkle in his eye, and this was like 6 months before he died in 1997.
Wow. Unbelievable, man. Well, again, Michael is putting out this book, Steve Holland, The Torn Shirt Sessions, the deluxe edition, and he's got a Kickstarter going on right now. There's just over 3 weeks left in the campaign. And hey, again, this is a really important chapter in the Doc Savage mythos. And I mean, as iconic as Christopher Reeve and George Reeves were as Superman and stuff, and name your favorite Batman and stuff, it really did. I mean, I know Lee Falk and the Phantom, and maybe because the pulps had even the original pulp covers of Doc, as opposed to being a comic strip and everything, really just had a bigger grandeur, and all the things that Siegel and Schuster took from Doc Savage and imprinted on Superman. I'll let you go through the laundry list of the swipes.
Yeah. I mean, Doc Savage was a man of bronze, and Superman was a man of steel. Doc Savage's first name is Clark. Superman's is Clark. When Doc Savage goes to regenerate and chill, he goes to the Fortress of Solitude, which Superman also has. But you mentioned the Phantom. The Gold Key comics. Remember the Gold Key comics from
Absolutely.
the 60s? With
of course.
Beautiful painted
covers? Yes, unbelievable covers. Different kind of art. Not bad art in the inside, but certainly different. But go ahead.
That's Steve Holland
Insane.
on those covers.
Insane.
And also, Magnus Robot Fighter is Steve Holland.
Wow. I had no idea. That's amazing, man. Again, I knew a lot of them. I'm fascinated by the Men's Adventure paperbacks and really all depictions of heroes throughout the 20th century. Because again,
right.
We're around the same age, Michael. We didn't have the and I don't mean to sound my day, but really we didn't have the entertainment options. So
exactly.
it was great that Bantam kept reprinting the Doc's pulp stories. Same thing with the Shadow pulps. I read all that stuff with the great Steranko covers and everything.
Yeah.
With the Shadow.
Yeah.
Come on. And that's why it's like, well, this stuff looks cool, and it looks like kind of a higher grade than the majority of what we were getting in the comics in the 70s and things. We had Neil Adams and other great artists after that, and then certainly in the 80s started to get more painterly people like Sienkiewicz and others. But this stuff. I mean, those Bantam covers begged you to look at this and go, all right, what the hell's going on here? Who is this guy? I want to learn more about this guy, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me as a kid. I grew up in Cleveland, and there was a used bookstore called Kay's Books downtown, and it was a huge bookstore. They had a sign outside that says, possibly the largest bookstore in the world. That's what the sign said. and it wasn't, but it was huge. And I would go in there to get comics, and I go in there to look at movie books. And I was walking through there one day, and I saw this paperback of this book. It said Doc Savage, The Giggling Ghost. And there's this bronze guy, his shirt's torn up, and he had a gas mask on. Oh, and I'm like, and I'm looking at the cover. I'm like, I think this is a painting, but it almost looks like it was a picture taken with a magic camera. And I flipped on the back, and it had a little synopsis of who Doc Savage was. And from that point on, when I went up to the counter, Miss K said, "Oh, you're into Doc Savage?" I said, "No, I never heard of him." She said, "Well, I've got a bunch of them over here." So all of a sudden, I'm getting bombarded with these incredible bomber covers, and that's what started my fascination.
100%, man. And same thing, like I said, with for me with the Avenger too, because again, he's all white, and he's got that amazing flak jacket that he's wearing, or whatever the hell it is. It's such a shame because there have been great Doc Savage comic books over the years, but I can't say the same. There have been very few of the Avenger. I remember Kyle Baker did an Avenger comic a while ago. and a few others, but I don't know. And also I remember in the 70s, of course, at the same time that we were getting that Mike Kaluta Shadow book, and Marvel doing great stuff in both in color comics, but also the black and white magazines. On those covers are really amazing. Those magazine covers were really beautiful images as well. But yeah, man, I don't know. It again, I think deep down in the DNA, it's look at right here another example of Holland's kind of that stoic look that just I think was so important and really made us pay attention.
And the Alex Ross shot that you just showed, if you look, the larger head is Steve Holland.
Yes.
And then the full body is Doc Savage. And Alex said that he wanted to do that as an homage to Steve and also connect the pulp from the 30s to the Doc Savage of today. And I think he did a great job.
Well, again, Alex has that eye and understands how to bring out the character in a single image. And I think it's amazing. And he does. He has tremendous respect for the generations before him. And I mean, God, you as look at his Justice Society iconic images and things. No, he has great respect for every age of comics and pulps and really just 20th century pop culture. I mean, I've talked to him about his monkey paintings and Monty Python and Bowie, and man, he got that license to do the Beatles and everything. No, he's Alex is a genius, absolutely. And Bama certainly was a genius, and makes sense that he would then, kind of leave the paperback world and, just start painting. And there were a lot of great pulp cover artists and interior artists that did the same thing. Do you have that Shadow scrapbook that Walter Gibson released back in the late 70s? Of course you do. There you go. I know what I'm talking to. But they all these great covers, and they would have modern images of the pulp artists and stuff from the 30s and 40s and what they were doing. And I remember one guy who was either an interior or a shadow cover artist. They showed him painting the official presidential portrait of Gerald Ford.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Wow. So, crazy stuff like that. No, man, and also Doc and, his five companions, kind of his own little mini Justice League, and they all had skills. He had the tech guy, he had the smart guy, he had really the template must have been the template for Wolverine and Monk Mayfair.
I would think, I would think.
Little ape-like guy that was a hell of a fighter, basically.
It was scary a few years ago. They announced that Shane Black was going to direct. He was going to write and direct the Doc Savage movie. And I'm like, okay, that could be cool.
Yeah.
But then they said Dwayne Johnson was going to star in it. I was like, And then there was an interview with Dwayne Johnson, and he just didn't get it at all. I mean, he was seeing it as a comedy. He's like, Doc Savage is, he's like socially inept, and he's this really smart, strong guy, but he's almost autistic, and he's got no social graces, and so that didn't happen, thank goodness. But Sony had the rights for a TV series for a few years, but I guess they couldn't figure it out, so I don't think they've got them anymore.
It's hard, man. I mean, well, I was going to say maybe Dolph Lundgren, but no, kind of too Teutonic, and that's not a disrespectful comment on my part, but he did. He looked too European, I think, and too German to pull it off. I know. For a minute in the 80s, they talked about Arnold, perhaps, and that might have been interesting. But again, I can't imagine Doc Savage having that kind of accent. So. Had to do
there was one guy that I thought, and I didn't know how good an actor he was, but I saw a poster for something that he did, and they essentially used the structure of the back of the Doc Savage paperbacks, which is Doc's head and then the five guys behind it.
Sure.
He had his name was Brad Johnson, and he started a TV series called Soldier. I think it was Soldier of Fortune, and he had the look. Like, okay, you, and he had the physicality, but I don't know how good an actor he was, and I'm sure they couldn't have financed a movie on his name because he wasn't really bankable.
Sure. No, and again, that's the key. God, I really am glad, especially after kind of the misfire that Black Adam was. That The Rock. That we're not going to get The Rock. And didn't he have like blonde hair in Southland Tales? He had some sort of slightly weird looking Southland Tales that wasn't typical for Dwayne Johnson. But
Yeah, Black Adam was the last project I worked on at Warner Brothers before I left.
Really? Oh, Michael.
Yeah.
And talk to me. Whatever you can. I know you're probably tied by NDAs, and I don't want to mess up your career or anything, man.
No. I mean, I when I worked at Warner Brothers, I worked in the special features department. So we hired the crews to shoot all the behind the scenes stuff, and then we would conceptualize the documentaries, the audio commentaries, get the deleted scenes and all that stuff. So we get access to the script, months before they start shooting. And I read the script and like, you can't shoot this. This isn't good. This isn't good. And, but at that time, the money was committed. Everybody was signed, who cares what I think? But, when the movie turned out the way it did, people were surprised. I'm like, if you read the script, you wouldn't be surprised. This isn't this, and it's too bad because I think he could have been a good Black Adam with the right film and with the right filmmaker.
Could not agree more.
The guy that directed it is essentially his go-to guy. And so
that's what I thought.
Yeah, he didn't really have a vision for it. He wasn't really a comic book guy. Dwayne Johnson's not really a comic book guy, and it was just a missed opportunity in a big way, and the fact that they didn't trust the character enough to just have it be about him, but decided, okay, we need to put in this mini Justice League, Justice Society, this pseudo Justice Society. And they didn't even do that well. It's like Dr. Fate's fine, Aldous is fine as Hawkman, but the young girl and the young kid, they were like in another movie.
Yeah, Atom Smasher and Cyclone. No, I agree with you. And it's funny. A good friend of mine this weekend and I were talking because we're both frustrated by Star Trek, new Star Trek product, and we were going through all the franchises, and he's like, "Well, really, what DC movies?" And we were going through them, and he goes, "What about Black Adam?" And I'm like, well, there are parts of Black Adam that I like, but no, as you described. And I'll even be honest, I'm a massive Justice Society fan. And I really thought, as you said, my God, Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate was like perfect. And it really is a shame that that's probably the first and last time we will see him as Dr. Fate. But, and forgive me, what is the Hawkman actor's name again?
Oh, Aldous Hodge. Hodge.
He was great. Man.
He was a great guy too, because we were doing a piece on. He also voiced John Stewart in an animated film.
Oh, well, because of course I know Phil Lamar did it on the series and everything. One of my favorite guys. But keep going.
Yeah. But he did that, and he had Black Adam, and so we were shooting behind the scenes. So we were doing a documentary on John Stewart. So he came in, essentially spent the day with us hosting this piece. And then we did another piece about the Justice Society for the film. And he did that as well. And he was just an awesome guy, just real easy to work with, really just solid, just really good guy.
Michael, I've bought movies that I'm not crazy about the movie, but I love the special features. And I'm a special features nerd to the point. A good friend of mine, I don't know if you know him, Robert Meyer Burnett. Did a lot of special features. He did them for the Lord of the Rings films, and he did Superman Returns, and a lot of, and also the Blu-rays for several seasons of Star Trek Next Generation and Enterprise. But I'm like, I love these special features so much. I'm like, honestly, if I had my own cable channel, I'd make a special feature channel and just show the documentaries of all the great things, because unfortunately, I don't. It's great that there are these other distributors that get the rights to movies, and they still load special features on there. But it seems like, and I'll be honest, I haven't bought a DVD in a while from a major studio release. But it kind of seems like the Walmart effect, where they were offering cheaper DVDs of films without the special features. They saw how much they were selling, and like, why are we spending money on these special features when we could give a bare bones version, and it outsells the special features version. Am I right? Is that kind of what happened?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, generally now, if you see a disc and it's loaded with special features, it's because the filmmaker really embraced the idea and really wanted to kind of chronicle the creation of his movie.
Okay.
Like the next to the last project that I did was the Batman, the Robert Pattinson film, and Matt Reeves and his producing partner Dylan, I can't remember Dylan's last name. They said, we want to approach the behind the scenes and the special features in a different way. So we don't want to use the typical vendors that you guys usually use, which was great because I had a vendor that I wanted to use. And we put a pitch together. They loved the pitch. And I mean, if whether you like the movie or not, if you're interested in behind the scenes, the stuff that we did for that Blu-ray is just, I'm really, really proud of it. It's amazing stuff. But it's all because the filmmaker and the producer gave us complete access to everything and everybody, you know?
That's how Rob described his experiences with me on things like, and he even did the X-Men, the Bryan Singer X-Men movies and things. But yeah, no, it really, again, especially when DVDs hit the market and stuff, I was all about the special features and really love listening to the feature length commentaries, and God, so many old movies. Thank God we got like Jack Lemmon doing a commentary for Mr. Roberts and things like that. And it's like, oh man, because, I mean, as you know, Michael, and you were even telling me off the air, some of the projects you've been working on and stuff. And, some of the people that you'd want to capture in a special feature or a documentary, they're no longer with us. I have the same issue with Word Balloon. I mean, I got to shake hands and spend a little quality time with Joe Kubert at a couple conventions. Never got him on the air. People like that. I'm glad I got my Steranko interview. Thank God he's still with us. But, Denny O'Neil I managed to talk to a few times, and Neil Adams and Marty Pasco and those guys. Yeah, man, no. And it's like, no, those guys have the stories. I've been trying to convince, and I'm going to publicly slightly shame him, although I don't think he watches this crap. Alan Weiss, the old Marvel artist. I've been begging him for like the last year. I'm like, Alan, you got to come on. He's like, nobody wants to hear me. I'm like, Alan, you've got the stories, man. You work with these people, and there aren't that many people left from your generation. I think it's important that we get your story down, man. And also just again, the people you worked with.
Yeah, I'm really happy that Howard Chaykin makes himself as available as he does,
Indeed, and one of my most recent interviews was because of the project you did with him. What was Dust? What was the name of the book again?
Oh, Fargo. Hell on.
Fargo. Excuse me. Yes.
Yeah.
Good Western. Yeah, man.
Yeah. But he's just such a great storyteller. He's so smart. He's got so much history. That is great that he makes himself accessible.
I'm really glad that you helped him with that Kickstarter and everything, and that was a successful campaign.
Yeah. He didn't want to do it. I sent him the book because I thought he liked the book, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to talk to the estate and see what rights are available." And he said, "Well, hey, if you get the graphic novel rights, I'll do the book." So that literally started my company.
That's amazing, man. That's fantastic. So Chaykin, and then The Art of Dennis Cowan. Now this new book again, the Steve Holland book, and also great information regarding Amazon's printing and distribution service. Because honestly, I'm tooling around with my Word Balloon book, and I was considering them as well as just again to facilitate. And it reminds me again when we were growing up, and we'd see a lot of these great old Hollywood books that, again, they were probably made with, as little funds as possible to just get it out there. And, we'd get these softcover books, and sometimes the paper was cheap, and, the photos didn't look as good as they could have if they were on a better quality paper and stuff. So, no, and again, thankfully, a lot of people who watch and listen to Word Balloon and stuff are aspiring artists and creatives that do want to do their own graphic novels or books and things like that. So, no, I really appreciate that. What you're telling us. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I did a book that was just text, paperback book that was just text, I wouldn't hesitate to use Amazon because for that, it's great. But when your book is heavily visual, you just really want it to look as good as it can look, you know.
Absolutely, man. No, 100%.
And the Chinese printers, the prices just blow the U.S. prices out of the water. Even with this new 10% tariff that the guy has kicked in, the prices are still better than they'd be if they were in the U.S.
I just hope, I just hope the channels literally from China to the U.S. remain open. I mean, I don't know, man. It's going to be a strange new world, and we're only 3 weeks into it. So we'll all grit and get through it the best we can. I mean, there's nothing else we can do. But have you ever sat down and watched Steve's Flash Gordon stuff?
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
I understand. Well, it was only one season, and obviously,
Yeah, and they shot it. They shot the bulk of it in Europe, and they used war-torn World War II locations for a lot of it. And he said it was beautiful over there, and just from different interviews that I looked at and read, said it was beautiful over there, and he made some good friends over there. But it was about as cheap a show as could be produced. But
that was kind of that's kind of the nature of 50s television in a lot of ways. A lot of people jumped in, and it reminds me of those Rocky Jones TV shows and movies that you can find on YouTube, and you can find the Holland Flash Gordon series on YouTube as well. You don't have to buy it, everybody. I mean, I've seen it in those kind of big amalgam, 50s TV sci-fi's collection, and it's this and a bunch of other shows. Things like that goofy Kane Richmond shadow movie from like 1958 or 59. It's interesting. Again, we're both broadcast nerds. I haven't really delved into your background, but in our conversations off the air, we're both old radio guys and stuff. Was Cleveland your market, or prior to LA, or?
No, I grew up in Cleveland, but the bulk of my career was in the Midwest. I was in Detroit. Well, let's see, Toledo, Cincinnati, Detroit, St. Louis, Houston, and then my last radio gig was in Los Angeles.
That's great, man.
Yeah, and then I left radio to work with Quincy Jones for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Sorry. Too bad he wasn't that smart of a guy, and not very influential. I kind of know the name. Jesus, what'd you do for Quincy?
Yeah. I was vice president of A&R for him. Yeah.
Wow.
It was really crazy. When I went to Los Angeles, we launched this radio station. It was the first time that an R&B station covered the entire market with its signal. We had a great signal. So the station was doing well. Quincy had this young kid named Tevin Campbell. He's 12 years old. And his first album came out on Quincy's label, Quest. And so his first single came out, it was a hit. And then the record company told me that they were going to make the second single, Strawberry Letter 23, which was a big hit for the Brothers Johnson back in the day.
I love Brothers Johnson. Stop. Come on, man.
Yeah. And I'm like, but that song, that's not a good song for a single. So I started playing this other song called Goodbye. And other stations across the country started playing it. So Warner Brothers went to Quincy and said, hey, we got to make this a single. This is the hit. So unbeknownst to me, Quincy said, who the hell is this kid that's taking my stuff and doing with it what he wants? And he just watched me he watched me at the radio station for like 2 years.
Wow.
And then one day he called out of the blue and said, we need to meet. And I worked with him for 3.5 years.
What years? What period was this?
92 to 96.
So was the documentary Listen Up? Were you in that era?
I was right after that.
Okay. That's a great documentary.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, everything. My God, that last Netflix documentary did Rashida do that?
Yeah.
His daughter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Man.
Well, she was a producer on it. I don't remember who directed it, but she was a producer on it.
Yeah.
I remember when Rashida was just this little kind of chubby kid that was quiet, and now she's everything.
Yeah. Oh no, my God. No, she's talented as hell, and yeah, and I'm glad she got rid of her. God bless her, she got rid of her baby.
No, working for Quincy was an experience. You know, you never know what would be on the other end of the phone waiting for you. Mike,
tell me.
Mike, you gotta fly to Winston-Salem. I'm like, okay, for what? So you got to convince Maya Angelou to do this record. I'm like, what? He's like, I want to take her poems and put music to them. I'm like, but why am I going? He's like, because you can close it. You can close it. So I pack my bags. I fly down to Winston-Salem. She won't let me stay in the hotel. I stay with Maya Angelou for 5 days.
Oh my God.
And she cooks for me every day.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, it was just, the Quincy adventures were just ridiculous. You know, we went to see Ray Charles, because he had signed Ray Charles to the label. And we're sitting in Ray's office. And I said, I got to ask you a question about your office. So he hit this button and the lights went out and the office was pitch black. He said, was that what you were going to ask me? I said, yeah, it was. He had an office where if he didn't want to deal with anybody, he just hit a button and it would just go pitch black. And a guy came in, Quincy had told me, he said, a guy came in mad at Ray about some publishing. And he said, I'm going to kick Ray, I'm going to kick your butt, blah, 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 blah. So Ray hit the button, the room went pitch black, and Ray came across the desk and beat this guy's butt. I
always wondered, and you would know because you met him and everything. So was he totally blind, or just mostly blind? Because obviously there are degrees that obviously are legally and clinically blind, but some people can see shapes or shadows or whatever. But totally blind.
No, I think he lost his sight completely when he was right around teenager, 12 or 13 or something like that.
Yeah, I know it was young. But, yeah. Oof. No, but
he was comfortable with it. He walked in a room and owned it immediately. And
again, in college, I really discovered his jazz years. I mean, I always knew, all the pop songs, Hit the Road Jack and I Can't Stop Loving You and everything else. And of course, when the Blues Brothers movie came out and, he's there and they're doing Shake Your Tail Feather, it's fantastic. And he was a big part of variety television growing up and everything. But man, I really heard a lot of his Atlantic. Well, maybe it was still Atlantic, but it was jazz stuff. And it was so great. And I'm like, man, he because all those he did his country songs too. It's like, my God, the guy can literally. He's like just like Bing Crosby. If you really know Bing Crosby's whole discography, it's like, no, Bing really did everything. And the same with Ray. Ray did everything and had succeeded in everything.
That was one of my crowning achievements. Although I had left the record company by then. He had done an album when Quincy signed him. He already had an album in the can that was not good, and so I was trying to find songs for him. So I was meeting with him, and he said, "Mike, let me tell you one thing. I'll listen to anything that you want me to listen to, but if I don't," he said, "I don't care if my mother came up from the grave, if Jesus came down from the sky and wanted me to do it, I'm not doing it because my music is all that I have. That's all that I am." Wow. And one of the songs that I wanted him to do was this James Taylor song called Sweet Potato Pie.
Okay.
And he wound up doing it on one of his last albums, his duets album. He did it with James Taylor. So I was really happy about that.
So was that not on Quest, that duets album? Okay.
No. Got it. He only did one record on Quest because he was a handful to deal with. He really was. Yeah.
Yeah, well, really, and when you think about it, two different guys that were two temperaments. Although I believe, going back to that jazz period, I think Quincy was the music supervisor of that period of Ray's jazz stuff and everything. And that's another thing. My God, Quincy, prior to my first exposure, the Bill Cosby Show soundtrack, the Chet Kincaid gym teacher, Lord, Hickey Burr. Yeah. And I'm only doing it for accuracy. I'm not trying to appropriate when I do my attempt at the theme song. But yeah, it's no, man. And again, that music was so great. Oh my, that music was 1971. and also, of course, the Sanford and Son work and everything. And then, I went back in the Heat of the Night and everything, and got everything. No, he's incredible, Quincy.
Yeah. I mean, one of the treats when I worked for him was, I knew on Sunday mornings he'd be up reading the New York Times, and I would always find some reason to call him. And I was watching The Getaway, the Steve McQueen film, and I didn't realize that Quincy did the score until I saw his name come up on the credits. So I called him because I knew he was at home, and I said, "Man, I'm watching The Getaway. I didn't know you did the score to that." He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "So Jerry Goldsmith did the score, and McQueen hated it. So Sam Peckinpah was out of town. Steve McQueen hops over the fence at my house. I got a new girl at the house in the bed. Steve's banging on my bedroom window. He's like, 'Hey, we got 10 days to do a new score.' So McQueen and I go and we lock ourselves in a studio for 10 days, get the score done, and that's what you heard." It's like,
wow.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, he was something else.
That's so great, man. I just want to point out our mutual friend Warren Drummond is watching us. My man Michael Stradford, and also he says, "So cool to have two great men and friends together." Thanks, Warren. I appreciate that. Well, the great guy's Michael, man. I'm just Jimmy Idiot with my little podcast and everything. It's all right, but you go ahead. Tell me about Warren.
I was just gonna say Warren's a good guy. I don't see him enough, but I'm happy he's here.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. No, he's a great guy. I've had him on a couple times and everything. No, he's man, when I go to San Diego, I see him every year, when I go to Cowan and stuff. So no, tremendous. Very, very cool. So what other great icons have you been in orbit with, Michael, that we haven't talked about already?
Oh man. I mean, I've had a fortunate career from radio to records to home entertainment to everything. And when I first started at Sony, I was the one-man DVD special features department. So like my third week there, I go to New York, we interview Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese, and Paul Newman within 48 hours.
Wow.
So I'm like, this is the best job I ever had in my life. That they were awesome.
That's fantastic.
But I mean, most of the interactions are acquaintances at best. But
Sure.
Once in a while, they're like some real friendships that develop. So like Mark Dacascos is a really good friend of mine, and Steve Guttenberg's been a friend for like 30 years.
Wow.
Carl Weathers was like a big brother to me. We acknowledged his passing, the anniversary of his passing yesterday. And that was, that's still a tough one. So I've been fortunate to meet, to work with a lot of people and befriend a handful, and I really value those friendships, those relationships.
Warren says the Enter the Dragon poster. So I assume that's there you go in the background here. I'm gonna zoom in, everybody. Here we go. There it is.
Yeah.
Boom. Excellent. Yep.
Yep. It's an original one sheet.
Wow, that's great, man. Oh my God, that's fantastic. Hilarious. Jeez.
Yeah, it's all about Bruce Lee. It's all about Bruce Lee.
I truly, because and now I'm blanking. House Party director Reggie
Hudlin. Yeah.
Reggie Hudlin, yes, of course, my God, and of course, integral in today's Wildstorm and stuff, or not Wildstorm, Milestone, excuse me, with Dennis and company, absolutely. Reggie and I were talking when he came on the show, and we talked about House Party and talked about a few other things. But I'm like, and again, and obviously I was teasing him about the cultural appropriation thing, but really, man, that 70s period when, as Carl Douglas sang, everybody was kung fu fighting, and it became so important for black films, as well as, of course, it was great getting the imports of all the great Hong Kong movies, the Shaw Brothers and all that stuff. But by the same token, again, there were white guys that were doing, kung fu. And it's like, hey, man, and Reggie and I were talking, like, we all loved Bruce Lee. And it wasn't like cultural appropriation or, hey, I'm going to steal that thing. It's like, no, this is the man. I mean, me and my friends, we had Bruce Lee posters all over. You'd get those magazines, Bruce Lee Lives and all that stuff. Oh my God, man, are you kidding me? And it's like, it didn't matter. It was just like, how you can't take your eyes off this guy. He is so fast and such a great action hero. He's amazing.
And I'll never forget, I was in Atlantic City with my parents in summer of '73. They were doing some stuff and I was going to go to a movie. So I'm walking down the street. One side of the street was Burt Reynolds and White Lightning. The side of the street I was on was Cleopatra Jones. So I said, I'll see Cleopatra Jones. So I buy a ticket. Great. I'm walking through the lobby and there's a photo of this Asian guy posing and he's cut up. And then there's a smaller photo of a black guy with an afro and a gi, and then a white guy in a gi, and these cut out paper dragons. It's like, oh, that's interesting. So I sit down and they showed the trailer for Enter the Dragon, and I lost my mind. I just lost my mind. And we get back to Cleveland. I see my buddy Ricky Thomas that lived across the street. I said, man, I just saw a trailer for this movie, this guy Bruce Lee, and da-da-da-da-da. He said, oh yeah, he died. I'm like, no, there's a new movie coming out in like 2 weeks. He's like, no, he died. And he went in the house. He said, I kept the old clipping from the paper. And man, I was gut punched. I couldn't believe it. And I can't even count how many times I've seen Enter the Dragon.
Oh yeah, man.
And
go on. No, go on.
As you say, and I've never had a cinematic experience like that in my life. I went to a theater that was packed. It was nothing but young black kids. And the fire marshal would have shut the place down because we were all in the aisle, seated in the aisles. And every time Bruce Lee hit the screen, the theater just exploded. I mean, it was never had an experience like that again.
That's outstanding, man. All right. You might have to translate for me here, but Warren says Mike introduced Dennis Cowan to our future Sifu,
yeah.
Earl White.
Yeah. Earl White is a martial arts master of the highest order. He could truly be the real Black Panther. I mean, he's a very spiritual, calm, centered, very nice guy, but deadly as all get out. I mean, just dangerous. And when Dennis first moved out to LA, he wanted to get back into martial arts. And I knew Earl. I met Earl through Mark Cascos, and I hooked Dennis up with Earl, and he studied with him for a long time. And Warren's been studying with him for 1,000 years.
Okay, because he's explaining to me Sifu is a kung fu teacher, and then he also said Reggie Hudlin and his brother Warrington are old school martial arts. Again, man, I get it. I'm too fat, but I'd be Kung Fu Panda. I'd be the white Kung Fu Panda. So yeah, man, I understand. It's no, that's terrific. And again, man, those movies endure and continue to influence. And God, it was heartbreaking that Bruce Brandon passed away during The Crow. And a good friend of mine were rewatching the original movie just a month or so ago. Yeah,
I'll give you a quick Brandon Lee story.
Sure.
When I was programming the radio station here in Los Angeles, every month they do a comic show down at the Shrine, and they'd often have guys there to push their new movies. So Fox had Brandon Lee there to promote Rapid Fire, and so I met his manager. I told him about the radio station. I said, love to have you guys come down and do an interview. So the radio station was an R&B station, but our morning man was white. It was a white guy in his mid-40s.
Okay.
And he was a really good jock, but he didn't really get the nuances a lot of the time. So I said, hey, we're going to have Brandon Lee on. You put him on in the morning. I'll put some questions together for you. He's like, man, I don't know having Brandon Lee. He's like, hey, do you think that's right for the audience? I said, look, if you were a black kid growing up in the 70s, you had 3 posters on your wall: the Jackson 5, Muhammad Ali, and Bruce Lee. I said, believe me, this is going to be okay. So Brandon came. People came to the radio station. Folks were calling, yo, man, your dad was the man. Good luck, brother. Good luck. I mean,
beautiful.
And my morning man was just stunned. He couldn't believe it. Yeah, like, hey, man, Bruce Lee means something. He really does.
Yeah. Jeez, that's amazing. You mentioned Ali. I had the pleasure. I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet the man.
Not when he was in great health, but I was glad that I met him a couple times.
I
Yeah.
met him in '91, and
Mhm.
he was having the stammering effect that his Parkinson's syndrome provided, but still razor sharp. And
Mhm.
I was writing for Boxing Illustrated, and it was before Foreman was going to fight Evander Holyfield. And
Mhm.
I'm like, and Howard Bingham, his buddy, the photographer, was with him, totally low key. And he had it wasn't Layla, but he had one of his daughters with him. And it was at a fight in South Bend, Indiana, by Notre Dame, and it was an ESPN card, one of those Tuesday night fight cards.
Mhm.
And I had my press credential, and Howard's like, Boxing Illustrated. I said, yeah, I wrote for Boxing Illustrated. I said, yeah, and he goes, I'll give you 5 minutes with the champ. So I had my little micro cassette with me and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, what do you think of Foreman, doing this at his age? And Ollie's still sharp as a tack. He's like, I think George's going to do good. He goes, listen, I'm not saying. He goes, I know it's one old man saying another old man's going to do good, but he goes, he's a different fighter now. He goes, he takes his time. He goes, that's how I beat him. He was rushing when he was coming after me, and I knew he was going to be rushing, so I held out, laid on the ropes, and covered up, and I let him beat himself up and tire himself out, and I knocked him out. He goes, George doesn't fight that way anymore. He knows his limits, and he fights to those limits, and he can still punch like hell. He goes, look at those guys he's knocking out. And he goes, I'm not saying he's going to win, and he might not, but he goes, wouldn't surprise me. And I'm sure he's going to have a good showing. And then Foreman does this amazing 12-round performance. Lost,
Right.
but gave Evander all he could handle at
Wow.
40, whatever he was at the time, 44, 45. And then he wins the title at 48. Come on. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, amazing stuff, man. Here, JD says he saw Enter the Dragon at an 11 p.m. show in the theater with his mother in 1973, and she loved it. Thanks. Absolutely, JD.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, no, Bruce was the man.
Dennis and I went to a Muhammad Ali book signing in New York once. It was Howard Bingham had put together a book of 30 years of photography photos of Ali. So we're in line, and I give Ali my book, and he looks at me and he motions for me to step back. So I stepped back. So he motioned for me to turn around. So I turned around. Then he motioned, and I leaned over, and he said, if I was a little slimmer, I'd have to take that suit off of you. He like, so he signs my book. So Dennis is next, right? Joe Frazier comes in.
Oh no!
So Frazier and Ali just start clowning and going at it.
Oh, that's
Dennis
good.
Dennis is like, well, what do we do? I'm like, we just wait until they're done and you get your book signed. So it was about 20 minutes later, and then Ali signed his book too. But it was amazing.
Amazing. But to be that close to see that kind of interchange. Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear, because I understood Frazier's frustration with Ali, and that HBO when they did the documentary about the first fight and everything. That was kind of the height of my sports radio time, and me and the co-host and stuff. We were fielding a lot of calls, and it's like, you got to respect where Joe is coming from. I mean, listen, we all loved Ali, but for Joe to deal with the teasing, and those are choice words, calling him an Uncle Tom back in 1970, not the, and it's like, not the, I mean, my God, what an embarrassment for Frazier to have to go through. And and I understood. I totally understood why he was, frustrated. So,
Well, fortunately, over the years, Ali never hesitated to talk about how he regretted how he treated Frazier during that time. So that was good to know. You could tell he really felt bad about that.
Yeah.
And it was funny, not the same, but somewhat similar when Sugar Ray Leonard beat Marvin Hagler, and we interviewed Ray for the Creed Blu-ray.
Okay.
And he and I were talking after we did the interview, and he said, man, I hated Tommy Hearns and I hated Roberto Duran. I love them like brothers now. He said, and it always breaks my heart that I was never able to get to that place with Marvin. He said, Marvin he just so hated the fact that he didn't win that fight. He said, the last time I saw him, he said, Ray, I won. And I said, yeah, Marvin, you did win. He said, but it didn't make any difference. He just held on to it. And you could tell Ray was really, he was regretting that. He was sad about that.
Well, I wrote in for Boxing Illustrated and also covered boxing on radio for many years, from about '89 to 2006. And I always said about that fight, Marvin blew it because he gave away those 4 rounds and he just kind of was circling a lot. And also, unfortunately, good strategy on Ray's part. When Dundee would scream, "All right, 30 seconds," and Ray knew he had to flurry to win the attention of the judges and stuff. That one judge, though, that Jojo Guerra, that had it so lopsided for Ray. I still remember his name. It's like, yeah, man, come on.
I thought Marvin did 3 things wrong. 1, he agreed to 12 rounds instead of 15.
Yep.
2, he agreed to a bigger ring instead of a smaller one. And 3, he agreed to those crazy gloves that had the thumb sewn.
The thumbless gloves. You're right. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Man, Michael, we're gonna have to talk boxing sometime. I'm sorry. Yeah. Rodney Barnes. It's the same thing, man. I found out Rodney Barnes was really close to Rock Newman, and so all the Riddick Bowes fights, and I'm like, oh, Rodney, you shouldn't have told me that, man. Because now every time we talk, we're gonna have to talk boxing and stuff. So, are you still a fight fan at all, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of segued over to UFC more, but
okay.
But I stay in it. Like I didn't get a chance to see the Benavidez fight yet. I'm going to try to watch it tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah,
but
me neither.
I hear it was a great fight.
I'm looking forward to the Beterbiev Canelo rematch coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll be interesting. Or no. Beterbiev and Bivol. I mean, the Russian.
Bivol, okay.
Yeah. No, not Canelo. Yeah. We don't know what's and isn't it interesting to try to make Canelo and Bud Crawford, Bud Crawford and everything, and it's like, but then again, I mean, Ray put quarters in his pocket and fought Donnie Lalonde and beat the hell out of him. So
yeah, but I don't know. I mean, if Bud wasn't 35, if he was 32, maybe I'd feel better about it. But at 35, I just don't like that for him.
I respect that. I absolutely respect that. And it's a really interesting moment in the heavyweight division. And in fact, I'm reading that Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua are talking about fighting. I'm for it, Michael. Honestly, it's okay that there's not a title. Hey, Max Baer and maybe I'm misremembering, but I know Galento and him had a good fight. But I mean, that's the thing. It's okay. I mean, I don't mind that there's not a title, and I understand they're in their mid to late 30s, both of them, and everything, Deontay and Anthony. But yeah, I'm like, all right, I'm cool with it.
I just feel like the amount of punishment Wilder has taken over the last few years, I just don't want to see him fight again.
I respect that too. I absolutely respect that.
Joshua, I never thought was great. And when we were working on the Creed piece I was telling you about, we also interviewed Michael Buffer. And Michael Buffer was a big fan of Anthony Joshua. I'm like, man, that dude's not that good. He's a
hilarious
guy. He's strong, but he's not that good. And he's like, no, Mike, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And then when he got dusted, and Buffer and I stayed in touch for a while.
Okay.
But when Joshua got spanked and I sent Buffer a note, radio silence. I haven't heard from him since.
That's hilarious. I met Michael when I was covering for print and everything, and it was hilarious because of course, let's get ready to rumble, and it's like, yeah, how you doing, John? Yeah, nice to meet you and everything. Like the street voice, very different from the ring announcer voice, and that's okay, man. Hey, we're both radio guys, Michael. We know guys like that. It's exactly fine. Matthew says it looks like Canelo and Bud are going to happen in September, according to ESPN. I'll
watch it, but I don't feel good about it.
Warren says, I love all the comments, everybody. First he says Canelo has a way better chin than Donnie Lalonde. Well, that's true. That's very true. Yeah. And he says in a much better boxer, Bud isn't naturally big enough. He won't hurt Canelo, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. I absolutely agree with you. I don't know if Bud's power will carry to the heavier divisions. I mean, we saw that with other guys like De La Hoya and that weren't as powerful as they were in the lighter weights and stuff. It's, I'm really happy that boxing is in a better place, but also for all those years that PBC and Bob Arum and the other promoters would silo off their fighters and not be willing. The fighters didn't seem to be willing to sacrifice their undefeateds.
as much as I'm conflicted that the Saudi Arabian promoters have taken over boxing, they're throwing big money, and contender versus contender. We're seeing what we grew up on in the 70s and 80s, where guys weren't afraid to, have a loss on their record because they knew if they won, it would only elevate them and stuff. And now we are getting these great, contender fights as well as big championship fights. So, but again, hey, Ferdinand Marcos gave us the thrill in Manila, and Mobutu gave us the rumble in the jungle and everything. So, sadly, boxing's always been kind of a blood sport that's been backed by blood money, frankly.
Yeah, true. True. Same with the UFC. I mean, they just did an event in Saudi Arabia this past Saturday.
Yes,
that money's always there for this stuff.
Yeah, and again, I can't deny I'm kind of glad that they're getting competitive. I have to say, I respect UFC a lot, but it just, I don't know. My buddy Bert Sugar, who I used to write for from Boxing Illustrated back in the day, and he's like, I don't know, John, the USC, it's a little bit of jiu-jitsu, it's a little bit of boxing, a little bit of wrestling. He goes, it's kind of invented that way. He goes, I like my sports pure. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, man. I heard him. Yeah. Warren says, and no one gets a WBC decision over Canelo. Bivol was almost cheated. No, but he wasn't, though. And I hear what you're saying, Warren. And the WBC, I mean, that's the thing. The alphabet belts are more meaningless than ever. And in fact, the Saudis are proving it as well, where they're able to cut through the garbage. I mean, my God, Usyk beats Fury for all the belts and the linear title. Right. And within 30 days, the IBF strips him of one of the belts. It's like, come on.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And of course. Crazy. Yeah. Oh, I like this boxing interlude. I appreciate it, Mike. That was very cool. Sure. Tell me more about doing the Creed special features and stuff. Great movie. My God, what a great movie.
Yeah, so the first film, I was at Warner Brothers, and MGM produced the film, but Warner's distributed it. So we did all the special features. So one of the things that I wanted to do was a piece about father and son relationships in boxing. And so that was when we talked to Buffer and we talked to Ray, and I saw a cut of the movie, and you remember in the film, in the climax, the final fight, Creed gets knocked down, he almost gets knocked out, and then there's this montage and then he pops back up.
Yes.
The cut I saw, when he gets knocked down, there's a split-second shot of Apollo Creed.
Right, I remember that,
and it jolts him up.
Yes,
but in the final film, there's like a montage of several other things before you get to Creed, so like almost like flashbacks through the film. But the cut that I saw, all you saw was that shot of Apollo Creed, and everybody in the screening room was like, and that was the scene everybody was talking about. But the final cut of the movie, that's not what you get in the movie.
Okay.
And Sylvester Stallone had final cut. That's all I can really say about that.
Okay.
But I was talking to Ryan Coogler about what I wanted to do in terms of special features, and I asked him, I said, have you shown it to Carl Weathers yet? And he's like, can't get Carl to see it. He won't look at it. And so I called Carl. And I said, look, I've never asked you what the deal was with you and Stallone, but you need to see this movie, because whatever's going on with you and Stallone, Rocky Balboa loves Apollo Creed. This whole movie is a love letter to Apollo Creed. So you need to see this movie. So he's like, I was just waiting for somebody whose opinion I respected. I'll check it out. So they had a screening. He looked at it. He liked it. He called Coogler. He said, look, you did a great job. However I can help you with this thing, I'll do it. And Coogler said, well, Stallone is going to promote it. So, can you guys be in the same room together? And Carl said, yeah, we're grown men. We're professionals. No worries. So, they did the premiere together, and, there's pictures of Carl and Stallone and Coogler and all that stuff. So I was glad that he saw it, and I was glad that he liked it too.
That's great, man. When Creed came out, it's like, man, it's a shame that they killed him off in Rocky IV, because it would have been even more touching to have them reconnect and, maybe him lose. I mean, I did like him, being with Apollo's wife, and then Apollo's wife raised him and everything. And Felicia Rashad, right? Wasn't she? Yeah. Because, and I forget the actress's name who originally played Creed's wife in 2 and 4.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know her name either.
Great actress. Really, for her, handful of scenes and stuff. No, she was great. But yeah, it's a shame because it would have been interesting, and it would have been cool maybe to have Adonis, raised maybe away from Creed and then reassociate him with them and stuff. But I love that film. And Coogler, man, Coogler's another one of those directors, man, like Scorsese, that knows how to shoot boxing and really literally put you in the action. I love those scenes and was really impressed with how and now I'm blanking on his name because I'm thinking of the character Conlon, the cruiserweight British champion that's the champ at the in the final fight, and also
Andre Ward.
Yeah, Andre Ward. Thank you, man. Yes, indeed. Yeah, and then being in both the first movie and the second movie. Yeah, that was great. And Michael Jordan did a good job, man. He looked credible.
Yeah, he did good. He did good. And I run hot and cold with him. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching him act, and then there are other times I feel like he gets lost in the role, and he's really good. I thought he was really good in Creed.
He was great too in Black Panther, and again, much like Carl being killed in Rocky IV, it's really a shame that Killmonger dies in Black Panther, and especially the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman and everything. My God, he is our 21st century James Dean. Only a handful of films, but what an impact and everything. And this guy's legacy is going to live for a very, very long time. And as much as I appreciate the legacy passing to Shuri, part of me is like, I really would have liked to have seen, I miss T'Challa, and I miss, I would, and again, maybe that makes me a chauvinist. I don't know, but I would have liked to have seen another guy being Black Panther because there was more story to tell, and it's kind of lousy. We only have that in the What If episode that Chadwick did and everything.
But I understand. Like I saw an interview where Coogler said it would have just been too hard to recast. And I'm like, then you should step off and do the third movie and let somebody else come in and do the second one, because there have been other actors who have died and the roles have been recast and the films have still worked. And if it's that personally upsetting and difficult, I completely respect it. But you shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel because of your discomfort. I don't think. I would have much rather seen them get another director, recast the movie, and just keep it moving, because they're ultimately going to have to recast it anyway. That's going to happen, right?
Right. Well, and also we're kind of forever ending with, a son that will, maybe grow up to be Panther. And I know, too, in Judd Winnick's Exiles comics, we saw T'Challa's son as a Black Panther and stuff in those alternate histories. Man, by the way, I don't know your feelings on it, but I, especially being a longtime comic book reader, the idea of parallel universes were always fantastic until Marvel in Phase 4 and Phase 5 beat the concept to death. Oh my God.
Yeah. and DC didn't help with the Flash.
Oh God, what a train wreck of. And although the one little thing, I like Supergirl, and of course Keaton back in the bat suit. Okay, all right. I can't. I only watch the Keaton scenes. I absolutely hear what you're saying. Now Warren says the Killmonger was going to be brought back if Chadwick hadn't passed. Okay, whatever. And it's a shame because, or even the other actor that played the warrior from that warrior sect on Wakanda and stuff. And I forget the actor's name and the character's name.
I know you're talking about.
But yeah, it's
I wish I liked that movie better. I don't love Black Panther. I wanted to
really
love it. I appreciate it, but I felt like he was more impactful in Civil War. I felt like T'Challa was the least interesting character in his own movie. I just. You did as raggedy as Aquaman was. The first time you see Aquaman and he's on the submarine and he raises hell for 5 minutes, you're like, okay, that's the dude. I get that. T'Challa never really had a scene like that where he was just a badass. He was the guy, and I just felt like Shuri's more interesting. Your mother's more interesting. Killmonger's more interesting. Lupita's more interesting. You know, the bald-headed warrior women are more interesting.
Yes.
And it wasn't because of Chadwick. It was just the way they chose to write it and direct it. It's like I wanted to love it, but I don't. But I appreciate it.
As a cultural observer, Michael, and you know, again, this is, you know, the Afrofuturism movement that seems to have risen or at least gained more prominence since Black Panther. I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's been there for a long time, but it's nice to see it getting
more focused,
some more focused and broader acceptance and appreciation. People seem to be more open-minded about it because, you know, one of the things that I think tends to happen a lot in this country, it seems like if you put focus on something that isn't specifically made for the masses, there seems to be a tendency to think that it's okay. Well, if it's not for me, then it's against me, and it's not that. You know, it's just here is something built for a particular group of people, but that doesn't mean that everybody else is excluded. It's just, you know, we're just trying to speak specifically to this audience, and if you're open-minded, come on in. And that's and I'm kind of veering off a little bit, but it's kind of the same idea. One of the things that always bugged me about the way people tended to respond to Black Lives Matter, no one's saying other lives don't matter. We're just saying that ours do. Not
sure.
that doesn't mean that yours doesn't because you're not Black. And I think it's one of the nice things about Afrofuturism. It seems like people aren't putting on that armor of this isn't for me, this is against me. It seems like they're leaning into it, like, this is kind of interesting. Let's see what this is about. And I hope that continues.
You know, it was, as we were saying earlier, that was our attitude about Bruce Lee. Yeah. You know, I mean, and especially those, you know, Big Boss and some of the other movies and stuff were made for a Hong Kong audience. And thank God the rest of us got to see it and appreciate it and everything. So, no, I absolutely hear what you're saying and couldn't agree more. Absolutely, man. Well, dude, you've been incredibly kind with your time. And really, I love and also, that's great, Michael. I appreciate that. But honestly, we went in directions I wasn't expecting. Do you want to mention some future documentaries that you're cooking on, or?
Well, I'll tell you about a couple of things. We're trying to get ready for the next Fargo book, but I don't want to do that until we physically get the first book in from China and get it in people's hands. But Howard Chaykin has written the script, and Butch Geis is going to draw it, which we're both really excited about.
Great.
So that's next in the comic book line, and then I'm starting to work on two documentaries. One is a documentary on Carl Weathers called Be Peace, The Legend of Carl Weathers. Be Peace is how he signed off his Twitter, all of his Twitter messages. And then the other is a documentary on 89-year-old Johnny Mathis, who at that age still has one of the classic voices of the last century. So we're putting a pitch together for him. Hope to get it in front of him before too long. And the Carl doc, we recently got our budget together, and actually tomorrow night in Eagle Rock they're having a screening of Action Jackson as an acknowledgement of his passing, the 1-year passing of his anniversary. So we're going to go see that, take a camera, film some people coming out, and get some thoughts. And we've got a long list of people set up for interviews, and, you know, really excited about pulling that together, and his family supporting it. So, you know, we have to do a great job on it.
Forgive me, because sometimes I forget which pop stars passed away and which ones haven't. Is Vanity still with us, or did she pass away?
No, she passed away.
I thought so. Yeah. Man, how tragic! Both of them gone. Man.
Yeah. She passed not long before Prince passed.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Like 15 years ago or so. Sure. Wow. Man. Yeah. No, it's and again, you know, as I told you, I truly saw Action Jackson back when it was brand new in the mid 80s, and I'm like, all right, waiting for the sequel. Let's go. A great new franchise. I'm for it. And also mentioning Johnny Mathis, I didn't tell you off there when you were telling me about you were working on it. One of my dad, one of his first jobs after World War, he was in the occupation. He didn't serve in World War II, but he had a job with, and I don't know, I don't know who ran the company, but essentially he filled cigarette machines at various nightclubs and stuff. That was his job. And he got to, I want to say, the Black Orchid, a fantastic nightclub from that era and stuff. And he saw a dress rehearsal, a rehearsal in the afternoon of Johnny Mathis. And he's like, the coolest thing I ever saw was watching Johnny Mathis in his prime, just belting him out, man. And he's like, it doesn't get any better than this. And I'm like, I get it, man. I so get it. No, and I was telling you, man, he's 89, like you said. It doesn't look like his iconic album covers or, even the way he looked in the 80s and maybe even in the 90s, because he is 89 years old. That voice is still crystal clear, man. He can still hit those notes. He's amazing. Yeah. I'm really glad you're doing that, Michael. That's both projects sound amazing, and I'm glad that you're following up with more of Chaykin's run with Butch Geist and everything. That's great. You're welcome back, truly, Michael. Anytime you got something new. But right now, the focus is on this fantastic Steve Holland book, The Physical Model of Doc Savage, the Torn Shirt Sessions, the deluxe edition. Look at some of these photos for the people that are, here again. This is a James Bama cover, but this is what Steve looked like, and these comparisons and stuff of the photographs that are in the book, and also beautiful representations of these iconic covers, and right down to the great stuff from Alex Ross as well on his Dynamite cover that he did. That was both an homage to Doc Savage as a character, but also Steve as a model as well. Really, really great stuff, and a really interesting story about Doc Savage's background that you may not know, but you're going to want to know, and you're going to want to back this Kickstarter. So look for it on Kickstarter. Michael Stradford, or Stradford, excuse me. Stradford?
Yep.
Yeah, the R's in there, excuse me. Like the theater. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, Stradford, and look up Steve Holland, and you should be able to find. And also maybe follow Michael on Facebook, and he's got links there for the campaign that has 3 weeks to go. But no, I'm really glad you're doing this, Michael, and amazing stories, more than I expected. And I'm going to probably bug you for more stories the next time we talk.
Oh, absolutely. This is fun. I've listened to your show for years, and I've always enjoyed it. It's kept me company many hours. So it's a real pleasure and honor to be here. And I appreciate you having me.
That's my pleasure, man, as well. And that's great. That means a lot that you're listening. Thank you very much. Thank you for the comments in the chat session. And more Great Word Balloon Live coming later this week. Make sure you stick with us. Until next time, everybody stay happy and safe and healthy.